Welcome to this week's edition of Bob versus Willie. You know us by now. That's Bob Gertz, and I'm Willie Witten. We're going to read off one of our fabled lists today, compare and contrast. Bob, who is it going to be today?
Canned Heat.
Canned Heat, an old band from the late 60s, early 70s. Bob, do you want to start this off, or shall I do the honors?
Go ahead, you do it.
Okay, I'm going to start with a track for my number 10 off Historical Figures and Ancient Heads. I Don't Care What You Tell Me. I like it because later on, after their first couple albums, sometimes they got into a pattern where a lot of the songs sounded the same. And this one had some different guitar tones. I liked some of the transitions between their verse and their jam. Bob, what do you got for your next two on 10 and 9?
Well, I have Long Way from LA for number 10, and that's off of 1971's Historical Figures and Ancient Heads. Ancient Heads at that time meant that you were some sort of a drug user, because if you were a head, you were using something, anything from marijuana to heroin. But even though the use of heavy drugs like that were not considered that cool. For number 9, I did Poor Moon, and that was recorded in '69 and released as a 45. It was the same recording that produced the Hallelujah album, but it wasn't until 2001 that it was included as a bonus track on updated CDs. The thing is, it's kind of an ecological song in a way, because it's about the possibility of destroying the moon, and that's why it's called Poor Moon.
I did not know that. For my number 9, I have Changed My Ways. That is off their Hallelujah album. The reason why I picked that is twofold. It's a very tight, concise song. Once again, it's got some great guitar, and the vocals on that song are what I would consider to be the most traditional, that sort of airy, not high-pitched, but that weird, unique sound that they had vocal delivery that I think most people, when they hear that, they're like, that's Canned Heat. For number 8, My Time Ain't Long. I have that for the same reasons as I do for number 10. I Don't Care What You Tell Me. It's a jammy type song. It's great. They really changed tempos going into the solo. I always enjoy the variation stuff like that. Bob, what do you got?
For number 8, I have Dust My Broom. Okay. Now, Dust My Broom comes from a pretty old song, and it was done by Robert Johnson, and he actually had been copying it from somebody else, an earlier version from the 20s, and then a little later on, Elmore James ended up doing it. And when Canned Heat did it, they did it using similar lyrics, and the key line of it was Dust My Broom, and it kept some of those lyrics, but changed a lot of them. For number 7, I have Amphetamine Annie, and amphetamines then as now were a scourge, and it's like many a hippie was destroyed because of using meth.
Yeah. Okay, for my number 7, you've already spoken about this tune, Poor Moon. In that Hallelujah album time frame. I just think it's funky. You like it for the lyrical, ecological references. I just think it's sort of a cool song that's different than the other songs off that album. Number 6, this is a cover similar to your Dust My Broom. I like Catfish Blues. I believe that's off their first album, self-titled. It's pretty much a straight cover, and I think they acquit themselves well. So what do you got, Bob?
For number 6, I have Parthenogenesis. And that was a song that was on their double album, 2 vinyl discs. And it was put together by their manager, Skip Taylor. He's the one that masterminded it. And it's a pretty long song, and it takes up probably 80% on one side of the album. and it went through everything from raga rock to just plain blues and guitar solos and electronic music and everything else. For number 5, I had Let's Work Together. And that was originally written by Wilbur Harrison, who also did the song Kansas City. And it was a cover when he did it. It was written, or when it came out with Canned Heat, it was on Future Blues, their 5th album. And it was the last lineup, or the last album to have the classic lineup, because of the fact that Ellen Wilson died.
Okay, interesting. My number 5, I have Evil Woman. That is off their second Boogie with Canned Heat, I believe. I like that song because it just opens up with such a great bass line. So I know that's maybe an odd reason to pick a song this high on the list, but the bass line is so infectious. It's so groovy. It's so cool that if you got either digitally or on CD, I think that's one of those songs where you find yourself going back to the beginning after the first 30 seconds just to hear that line. Number 4 off the same album, Marie Laveau. It reminds me, it's a very guitar-centric song. It reminds me very much of another band from that era called Moby Grape. They had a song called Miller's Blues. And so whenever I hear that song, I think of the two of them together. And that's one of my favorite blues riffs of all time. So, Bob?
For number 4, it's Rollin' and Tumblin', which is probably one of my favorite all-time blues songs. I love that song. I've heard it performed by so many different bands over the years. But the thing is, they performed it at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, and then they released it on their album that came out afterwards. And it was a song that it was popularized by Muddy Waters. Mm-hmm. And for number 3, I have On the Road Again, and not to be confused with Willie Nelson's On the Road Again. It was a song that was reshaped from Tommy Johnson's lyrics from the 1928 recording. And the thing about Canned Heat, they used a lot of old blues stuff, but they gave credit. They weren't rip-off artists like, some bands were.
Zeppelin. All right. So for me, I've got at number 3, I have Going Up the Country. A lot of people will put it higher. It's probably the most recognized Canned Heat song. It's iconic during the Woodstock hippie era. It's one of those songs. It's only at number 3 for me because I feel it's a victim of its own popularity. Number 2, I have Parthenogenesis. For all the reasons that you already spoke about, I liked those weird variations and extended full side of an album, I think, more than most people. So that's why that's my number 2.
Well, my number 2 is Fried Hockey Boogie. And Fried Hockey Boogie was written by Larry Taylor, the bass player. And it's one of those songs that's 11 minutes long again. And so it had a lot of jamming. Everybody jammed on it. And it was one of those songs that you like to listen to when you're tripping. Now, the thing is, they had a song called LSD Boogie, but it was only a little over 3 minutes long. So even though I like that one too, I preferred this one. My number 1 is Going Up the Country, which you already picked. And the reason why it became so popular is it became the song that you associated the movie Woodstock with. Yes. Now, the Woodstock Festival is something that, is legendary and everybody talks about. Now, I didn't go to the Woodstock Festival, even though some of my friends went, because I had already promised to stand up for a friend of mine for his wedding. But the thing is, it's like this song ended up popularizing Woodstock, and Woodstock became something bigger than it actually even was because of it. And it also was peaking at number 19 on Billboard's Hot 100 and became their biggest hit.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you're a good friend. I would have gone to Woodstock. Or just move the wedding to Woodstock. Anyways, my number 1 is a song that you've already mentioned, On the Road Again. like you said, also, they did take a lot of different parts of songs, mix and match, give credit. I thought it's something that's interesting about Canned Heat. I like it the most because I just love the way the song comes in and leaves. That weird droning sound and the sort of separated instruments at the end. I thought it was very cool, very spacey. We have sort of similar lists. Certainly at the top, they're similar. I don't have any complaints with any of yours. Do you have any like great memories of Canned Heat, the first time you heard them or the first time you sat down and really listened to like a side with a friend?
Well, I really enjoyed Henry Vestine's guitar playing.
Okay.
And Al Wilson was a great guitar player too. And so when the two of them would jam, it's like it was just amazing. And the thing is, it's like I would listen to, I had their first albums and I would listen to them all the time. And I later met John Fahey, the guitar, steel stringed acoustic guitar player, who was best friends with Henry Vestine. And John told me about how Canned Heat was formed. It's like he was instrumental in forming them because all of them were record collectors. All of them were blues historians, and they used to go into the South the same time that the Freedom Riders were going down there to, try to get Black people to vote. It's like they were going down there trying to rediscover all these blues artists. And they were often confused with the Freedom Riders and were threatened. And they go, no, we're here to get blues records. And the thing is, it was interesting the way that he said that it came together and they wanted him to be part of it, but he didn't want to be part of the group.
Bob, always ask you something at the end because you always have a little knowledge drop.
And I might mention one other thing.
Sure.
Harvey Mandel replaced Henry Vestine. And when I was living in LA, I was working out at Bill Pearl's gym in Pasadena. And I worked out with this guy for, about 6 months. He used to come in the same time as me. We came in early, about 3 before the crowd. And he did bench presses and I did bench presses, and we were both the same size, so we'd spot each other. And after about 6 months, his name was Harvey. And after 6 months, I said, Harvey, what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm a musician. I said, wow, is your last name Mandel? And he said, yeah. And I got tongue-tied. I couldn't even continue. And we just kind of dropped the subject and finished our bench presses.
Yeah, I enjoyed going back through some of the Canned Heat stuff. For me, it reminded me that they're an underrated band. Bob, that's all we got time for this week. Bob Gersten, I'm Willie Witten. If you want to say something, leave a comment. We love to hear about it. Leave a like. That always helps other people discover this show. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, this has been Bob versus Willie.